Hey guys, we are going to talk about £8,150 fee that I got in the bank as an absolute baby beginner. Don't quite know what I'm doing, but I got a rough idea. Deal packager, right? And quite frankly, if I can do it, so can you. So let's just backtrack for a moment. I'm Susannah. Lovely to meet you if this is your first time on the channel. And I run the Good Property Company. Been in property for, golly, 15 years or so at time of filming. And we've done £45 million worth of property, over 200 deals. And I'm now financially free. I'm chatting to you from my apartment in Barcelona. I live 9 minutes from the beach. I go swimming in the Med every day when I'm here, but I also live in Bristol where I've got a sizable property portfolio. But I didn't start off that way. My background is head of household, which is a very nice and polite way of saying single parent. And I knew that I wanted to get out of my corporate day job in order to spend more time with my family, in order to give generational wealth, in order to have a pension, all of those fine things that probably are the reasons that you're here too. I wanted to live my life on my terms. So what is deal packaging? Deal packaging is when you find a discounted deal, you find an investor, you put them together, the investor buys the deal, you never need to buy the deal, but you get paid a fee. I used to charge 5% of purchase price, and we used to sell deals within 30 to 60 seconds, but that is for more detail. Let's talk about the very first deal I ever bought. So what was the background of this deal? It was my very first deal. It was called Grove Road. Very sadly, it was a small-time property investor who was in the middle of renovating it and he died. I mean, awful. He wasn't even that old. And his family didn't quite know what to do. So very sadly, his estate became bankrupted because they didn't renovate it, they didn't sell it, they didn't do anything with it, and it kind of stood still. So it was repossessed. So it was bought from an estate agent from the bank as a repossession. It needed about £8,000 worth of renovation to be done. And of course, because it didn't have building regs compliance, it was difficult to get mortgages. So you needed somebody that had the cash to buy it, which was one of the other reasons why it was bought discounted, because it wasn't compliant. So therefore mortgage companies weren't that interested. Great. In a sad sort of a way, but the circumstances were there. So it's time to move on, isn't it? Who did I sell it to? Now, this is where, if you're starting off in deal sourcing and you're thinking no one's going to be comfortable to work with me, you are wrong. You are wrong. I sold it to a man who owns an estate agency company. So why couldn't he buy his own deals? Well, because this deal was so good, it was really worth him buying it for me. So the asking price was 200,000. There were no takers. We got it agreed at 163,000 quid. It was worth at the time with the £8,000 renovation, 240,000 quid. So it is no brainer that this should be a deal that could be bought. And how did you beat the competition? I knew about building control and I knew about retrospective planning permission. So the reason that you find discounted deals is often you solve problems. So did the chap that bought it from me. So he bought it for 163,000 from me. I got paid £8,150 and he got retrospective building control, and therefore he was able to then remortgage it, rent it out, and the value was 240,000 quid. So some of the time you need to know about how to solve problems when you're finding deals. So how do you get deals like this? Get educated on solving things like building control and retrospective building control. What kind of an investor buys a deal like this? Well, the downside to it is, of course, it needed to be bought cash. So mortgage companies won't fund it because it didn't have the proper certification. It only needed £8,000 worth of renovations, but it still didn't have the proper certification. So you need somebody who's got cash, who's a little bit understanding of retrospective building control. You know, either they know about it already or you talk them through the process. So you need somebody that's relatively experienced with a bit of cash that's saying, yeah, bought 163 and value 240 with an £8,000 refurb. Yeah, I'm in. Where do I sign? Tip here is know your investors. This kind of deal wouldn't suit every single one of my investors. I had some baby beginner investors. They'd have ran a mile from understanding how to do retrospective building control. And maybe they only had £100,000 cash, not the whole 163 plus the £8,000. So understand each of your investors' financial situations, but also their, I wouldn't call it emotional situation, but their current position within their knowledge base and skill level in property. This was a slightly more specialized deal, needed to go somebody with greater knowledge and a greater cash pot than the average investor who was saying, yeah, I'm going to try buying properties from you, you deliver them on a plate, I want them vanilla. This one wasn't so vanilla. So understand who this would fit within your investor group and then pick up the phone and sell it to them. So what happened with this deal? Well, the estate agent wasn't the first person. By this point, I was running an investor group. I had a lovely investor called Andrew. He had something like, I think, 140,000 quid or something like that. He was looking for deals. I knew this would suit him perfectly. So I said, hey, do you want to get going on this? And he said, yes. But what he meant was no. But what he said was yes. But what he meant was no. Why? Because he was a vanilla investor and I hadn't, it was my first deal. I didn't quite understand that. And so we got closer and closer to the time. He only had to borrow like 40 grand. It would have been super easy. He had other properties, although he was very vanilla, and he had his own house as well. So he could have easily raised the money. And what you'll tend to find is investors don't like to say no to you once they've committed to a deal. They just shrink and they fade and they disappear. And you're like, we're buying the property next week. Where are you? Where's your funding? And so I had to give him deadlines. He then surpassed the deadline. I gave him another deadline. He passed the deadline. I then gave him a third deadline. Then I was like, Andrew, you need to come out of this deal. I need to sell it to somebody who's much more experienced. So it was a tough, sleepless night education to understand that your vanilla investors won't take on a slightly more difficult problem like this one. So it was a learn for me. And what did I do? Well, tip number 2 is put in a payment plan for commitment. So quite quickly, and because of this situation, which was my very first deal, I learned you can't just take it on trust that somebody's going to buy a deal from you. Yeah, I want that deal. Okay, let's see you. So after that, I always put in £1,000 reservation fee, which was non-refundable in the legal contract we signed, in order to see, are you serious? Are you got skin in the game, or are you just talking a good game, but when it comes to it, you're going to back out and you're going to leave me looking foolish? Because if I hadn't worked really hard to find that other customer, I'd have looked like a right little nitty. Oh, sorry, I'm buying this deal, but it turns out I haven't got an investor. So as a deal packager, it's actually really important that you put in a pay envelope. And I ended up putting in 2 pay envelopes, not one, as a result of this learn. Pay envelope number 1 is, in order to join my group, I'm going to charge you some money on an annual basis. And so if you're not serious, don't come in my group, don't waste my time. And then also, in order to reserve this deal, it's £1,000 reservation fee, which of course comes off the deal sourcing fee. And if you're not serious, don't waste my time, don't pay the money. Now, the problem with getting investor number 2 on board is I think I had about a week left until the estate agent was going to kick me out the deal, because investor number 1, Andrew, had delayed for so long. So this investor was a guy called Mike. He owned an estate agency company, and boy, oh boy, was he really good at the art of negotiation, which was very difficult for me because my terms are 5% of purchase price, non-negotiation, everybody's treated the same. So the 2 days before he was due to exchange, he was like, Suze, I don't think you've done enough work. I'm going to pay you less. And I was like, no, you're not, Mike. I might have sounded cool as a cucumber on the outside, but inside I was absolutely terrified. Why? Because he could have probably just jumped round me and done the deal anyway. And then my question was, am I going to sue him or not? So tip number whatever we are at is make sure you've got a working relationship in advance. Remember, this was my first deal, so of course I was scrabbling a bit, so that your investor fully understands your terms and conditions, has signed the terms and conditions, and has bought into the fairness and decency of it. There's no last minute negotiation where I'm going to yank you down in price. So I didn't sleep for about 2 or 3 nights before that deal exchanged. I held my ground, I held my breath, and he paid me the full fee. But did I work with him again? No, you don't treat me like that. My third tip is know the value of what your investor is getting. He was getting something like 69 grand profit. So me charging an £8,150 fee is perfectly acceptable. Know your value, know your worth, know that you're giving the investor an amazing opportunity, and hold your ground. Not fun at the time, but it really taught me that he, in the end, valued the deal and was prepared to pay the agreed price in the first time. Phew. You know the Japanese theory of Kaizen, continuous improvement? Well, that's what it is like in property. That was deal number 1, and it taught me so much about relationship building, about getting commitment, about having some skin in the game, about memberships, about paying reservation fees, about just working with the right investors for the right deals and not presenting a more complicated deal to a vanilla investor. So I got a final tip for you, which is avoid non-committals, which this lovely chap Andrew actually was, but also prima donnas who are like, I'm going to ask you to jump this high, and you're like, no, this is a group. I'm going to supply good quality deals. You're going to decide which deal you're going to buy. End of story. We're not messing around. Okay, guys? So my final tip, you learn or you earn. Keep a sense of humor. Most of my relationships with almost all of my investors were great, one or two, but if it doesn't work out well, you breathe, you reflect, and you think, well, okay, what did they do? But actually, what did I do? What could I do better? What can I improve in my processes? What can I improve in my systems? And how can I get better at this thing so it goes smoother the next time? So you earn or you learn. I got paid 8,150 quid, my very first deal for a sourcing fee. I just jumped out my day job. It was super exciting. But more importantly than that, I learned an absolute ton on my very first deal, which really put me in stead for the future. So, tip 1, get educated about solving building problems like building regulations. Tip 2, know your investors' strategy and their financial position. Tip 3 for you guys, have a panel, or didn't tell you this one, have a panel of 3 solicitors so that your investors can work with them. Tip 4, definitely put in a payment plan so that you can see who's committed and who's just talking the talk but ain't gonna walk the walk. Tip 5, you ready for this one? Get more investors than you need on board. Why? Because somebody is going to drop out and you're going to need to replace somebody at the last minute every now and again. This wasn't the only deal where people dropped out at the last minute and you had to replace them, but it was my first and my most worrying. So always have slightly more investors than deals so that you can replace your investors when they do the silly fandango. Tip 6, know the value of what your investors are getting and charge what you are worth. Don't undercharge. Tip 7, avoid non-committals and prima donnas. And final, you earn or you learn, keep a sense of humor. So hope that was super useful for you. And the reason I made this video was to show you my stumbling very first deal. So I don't want you to think, oh, all went smooth for her. There's a reason why I can't get into property. No, I stumbled like mad at the beginning, and you're probably going to do a bit of stumbling as well. So I got loads of amazing resources for you on my website, thegoodpropertycompany.co.uk, how to deal package, how to source, how to find investors, how to joint venture, how to get started, and a whole load of downloads, and also a whole load of masterclasses that you can watch straight away. And remember to like and subscribe for the YouTube channel, because the videos will come out for you, and to be honest, it'll help me as well because it gets the message out to more people. But most importantly of all, A, good luck. Absolutely. B, know that you can do it with the right education, and C, go for it. You totally can do it. Good luck. Good luck to you. I hope you enjoyed that vid. There is a 101 lessons pack if you haven't downloaded it already. 102 pages. I don't stint. If you just click on the link over there, you can download it now.